Hello, ladies, and welcome to the Beauty Shaman. And today we are talking all things Venus. Oh my God, because I'm the Beauty Shaman and we got to go into Venus as the Beauty Shaman, okay? My guest is astrologer and intuitive consultant Natha Campanella, who started studying astrology 7 years ago, inspired by her first astrological reading that brought relief to her then very chaotic life, which I totally relate to. So thank you, Natha, for joining me.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
So Venus is doing some stuff, right, to humanity right now. I mean, there's lots going on. So we've got some big wigs at the top toppling because women are speaking up. Some are not toppling. We wish they were. Hello, Brett Kavanaugh. But anyway, that's my own sort of side opinion. You've got Hollywood taking some hits. You know, it feels like the Botticelli painting, like Venus is coming out of the water and she's like, I'm here. And, you know, she's making a big splash. But, you know, at the same time, there's a lot of people struggling in romantic relationships, me included. So we've got kind of this power happening, but then there's also all this other divorce and stuff. So there's a lot going on with Venus. So let's talk about, why are we talking about Venus in particular in relationship to all this? I think you've got to kind of explain a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So in astrology, Venus is the planet that rules a number of things. She rules the divine feminine, and we all have the divine feminine within us, even men. She also rules value and the way that we value ourselves, the ways that we attract people to us, and the things about us that we use to, that we're attracted to. And so, you know, Venus also rules love and intimate partnership. And it's big. It's really up for us right now. We're humans, and really I think a lot of us want relationship. Even if we're not in a romantic relationship, we might be recovering from one, we might be desiring one, we might be idealizing one from the past. You know, we are relational beings. And so I think that relationships tend to be up for us in general, but particularly right now, we're in a Venus retrograde. And anytime that a planet goes into retrograde, it's almost like we have to enter into a school where we, in this case, have to learn about ourselves in relationship. And so we're really feeling it. And then, of course, like you mentioned with the politics, without going too deeply into what a progressed chart means. But the USA has a birth chart, just like anybody else. And it was formulated on July 4th, whatever, I can't remember the year, but the progressed chart.
I don't either, it's all right. I'm never paying attention and all that.
History, not my thing. Yeah. But the progressed chart of the USA currently has Pluto, which is the planet of death and rebirth and transformation and the dirty, dark secrets that we all have. Pluto is at 29 degrees and Venus is at 29 degrees, and they're in a square. And so that totally describes why the Me Too movement is happening. There are more and more women that are speaking up. The shadows and the veils are really becoming exposed about the relationship, the dysfunctional relationship between some men and some women, in terms of the collective, right? And I think that we all then, on a personal level, end up having to work those themes out personally. So the places in our lives where we are maybe deceptive or have been being deceived, or perhaps not had the boundaries that we wanted to, or not valued ourselves in the way that we should be in order to have really functional relationships, it's all coming up for review right now.
So Venus retrograde kind of causes, it sounds like, some havoc, you know, because secrets coming out is a certain amount of chaos, right? Yes. And so it's really making everybody question. It feels to me, tell me I'm right here, but question not only their own, you know, because of their secrets, but also kind of roles. Like, you know, men are right, women are wrong. You know what I mean? There's certain roles that are just being sort of chucked out the window.
Yeah, and just to make the distinction for anybody that is that is curious, the US progress chart with Pluto and Venus in a square is actually something different than the Venus retrograde, but they are both totally merged with each other right now and merged with us, especially those of us in the United States. But yes, you're right. Both things are bringing up our values and the way that we see roles, and particularly the Venus retrograde, which I think that we should talk about right now because we're in the middle of it, and we will be until November 16th of 2018. It happens to be happening in two signs. One sign is Scorpio, and Pluto rules Scorpio. So again, that's bringing in this theme again of really looking at really looking with intense honesty at some of the shadowy sides of the way that we do relationship. And then Libra is about boundaries and really getting a feel for, what are we genuinely attracted to, and what are we using to attract people to us, and are those things functional? Do they need to be reviewed and changed?
And you see a huge amount of review going on right now. I mean, I'm in the beauty business, obviously, and women are really starting to question the beauty paradigm of what we're supposed to look like, right? And how we're supposed to present ourselves to the world. We're supposed to have large breasts. We're supposed to not be fat. We're supposed to dress a certain way, right? There's this whole very, very toxic, exhausting paradigm that is really dropping. I mean, you can just see it, right?
Yeah. That's funny. I just had this conversation with a client about how women for so many years, we have gotten the idea that our value is in being young and thin and pretty, and how those really are so many of us. And I think especially those of us in this demographic, we're just questioning it. It just doesn't make any sense to us anymore. And when we're doing our own value work, when we're trying to figure out, how we value ourselves and what is valuable about us, what we realize is that we're valuable because we love and we give and we're intelligent and all of these things that have absolutely nothing to do with being young or thin or pretty. And I mean, I'm hoping that more and more of us will begin to get to that place. And, I have teenage daughters, and I know that you as well. And I see how hard it is on them. And I remember how hard it was on me. And it's such a paradigm that could use shifting. And I think all of us, if we're willing to do the work right now, especially those of us in this age group, really can have a profound effect on change. And that starts with examining our own Venus.
Right. So let's talk about examining our own Venus, okay? So, I mean, I'm definitely examining my Venus. I didn't know I was, but yeah, I definitely am around what you're talking about. So what can women, let's kind of go into what that looks like, what kind of things we should be, or we are thinking about, but maybe bring those to the surface, and let's get some direction with those.
Yeah. So Venus is, essentially the very strong, passionate, feminine energy that we all have within us. And when we look at a natal chart, which is a map of where all of the planets are at the time that we're all born, all of our Venuses land in a specific spot. They land in a specific sign and in a house. And when we understand what our Venus looks like, it really opens up the whole world and gives us some ideas. So for you, for example, we talked about this. You have Venus in the sign of Capricorn, which means that for you, it is very important for you to be somebody that you can depend on, and to have a partner that you can depend on, and that you might have some very specific ideas about what your value means. And so for you, it would be really good to examine, where am I being really hard on myself? Where are my standards so high that I could never meet them? And I keep myself really devalued because of these limiting beliefs. And we all can do that. We can all look at our Venus, and that's such a teeny weeny little nutshell of what your Venus is doing. But, for anybody that wants to know it's great to get a reading from an astrologer, but if you don't want to do that, you can get a free birth chart on astro.com, and you can look and see where your Venus is, and you can even Google it and just get some ideas of, who am I in love? What am I looking for in a partnership? And that includes a partnership with yourself.
Right. I think it does. It encompasses not just romantic partnerships. And I think we had talked about this earlier, and I think this is really important, is it encompasses all of our relationships. And I think about the point of value that you made of, and bringing it back to me here, but, the value thing has been a huge issue in my life, because my standards are way too high. I can never meet my standards, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always feeling devalued and less than, when other people might look at me and go, what? Like, what's wrong with you? But it's a battle. But I think with Venus, I feel like we're dealing with our individual value as well as the value of the way the world sees us. So it's kind of a two-step thing. We're trying to figure it out on our own. And and you brought up talking to an astrologer, and I just want to tell the audience, I love astrology, and I really encourage people to use astrology, because it has really helped. I've always been very confused in relationships because of who I am, basically. I didn't understand how I came across in relationships and why they kept failing when they keep failing. But that's okay, I'm still working on it. But a lot of it does have to do with what we're talking about. And I think relationships are really struggling. There's lots and lots of divorce. Do you think this is because of the Venus kind of battling it out in each individual?
I think that, if we look at each individual natal chart, we can really tell a very detailed picture of love and relationship, and what each person is supposed to be or desiring to do in terms of relationship in their lifetime. And I think that what's happening right now is that we are really having to change the idea of what partnership has been for many hundreds of years. And that includes coming to a place where there is more equality in relationship, coming to a place where women especially value themselves more, where we are not being held hostage by these really superficial ideas of what we bring to the table. And so we're all having to do the work individually. And what I often see in charts is that relationships come in to teach us specific pieces of the puzzle. Relationships are like college, university classes where we have to learn something specific from this person about ourselves, about what we like, what we don't like, who we are. And when the lesson is finished, then the relationship ends. And sometimes the lesson is never finished, right? Sometimes people find somebody and they're with them for the long term. But many of us in this day and age, that's not how it's working. We are having to learn who we are through the mirror of people. And sometimes we need a lot of mirrors.
And it feels like it's speeding up. Is that correct, you think?
I feel like time is really speeding up. It's almost like the human race is wanting to evolve, and we don't have the luxury of time anymore. It's kind of make or break. We're looking at, the depressing things like the environmental issues, the water issues, all of these really big human things. And on a personal level, I think we understand that. It's like, okay, let's do this work. I don't have 30 or 40 years to work a relationship or to work in a career. I need to switch it up. I need to continue to gather more info.
Right. And, especially if I want to kind of take it back to the Me Too movement and women really, there's been other movements besides the Me Too movement that have just never taken hold. And all of a sudden Me Too comes out and it's huge and it's toppling major players, and so, to me, this feels like it's just like a compression. Like, okay, now you guys got to learn this now, with women and power and men and our roles and just all this stuff, which really there isn't maybe a role definition. Like maybe that's kind of what's happening is we're starting to diffuse all of that.
Yeah, I think that, as much as we wish that Donald Trump wasn't in office, what he did for us was he pulled he stepped out from behind the curtain. And when you look back in history, we as a people have been really willing to put our blinders on and assume, oh, this person is Democrat, that means he's good. And, oh, of course the politicians aren't doing this terrible thing. But when Donald Trump got elected, suddenly the shadow dissolved. And we're all looking at this stuff we're having a reality check. And I think that the Me Too movement is one of those, is we just can't unsee what we see.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, we have been systematically sexually harassed since we were very young. Most women have. I don't know that I know any women that don't have a story for a Me Too story. But now it's like we can't go back, and all we can do is move forward. And I think that's why these movements are taking such hold. What do you think?
Yeah, and I also want to talk about going forward. So what is going forward right now? What does that mean? What is our direction with, okay, we got Venus retrograde ending November 17th, but what is the way forward with us?
I think the way forward is that, these Venus cycles last for 19 months. And so even when the retrograde is over, we'll still be working on these themes. And, it is about, if we are all as awake and aware of our personal processes as possible, that is moving forward. If we are able to really say, my relationship history may look bad, and it's not all because of the partners that I've chosen. I have a piece in it. And what is my piece? And what can I change? And I think that's really the thing, is what, if we look at ourselves, what can we change? What does our Venus want from us? What is the special power and the special gift of our Venus? For you, with your Venus in Capricorn, your special gift is that you have this inner authority that is hugely powerful if you capitalize on it. If you're beating yourself up and being super judgmental, then your power diminishes. But if you can really move into your Venus and really see that you have this capacity for authority and capacity for leading women, which is what you're doing with this, that's feeding your Venus. And we all have a Venus in our chart. And so, are we feeding or are we starving our Venus? I think that's a good question.
And one of the points we had talked about earlier in a discussion was our becoming smaller, becoming bigger. And what does it mean for women now to become bigger, to step into our bigness? And what does this look like? Because I think, society is definitely, and our culture is definitely, like you say, everybody has a story about being put down and kept small. And I think now that we're able to step out, I feel like I can do it. It's almost like peeking around the corner, is anybody going to hit me if I do this? You know what I mean? Because I'm so used to being minimized. And, I was religious for a long time, and nothing against religion. There's a lot of great religious people out there, but the group I was in particular was very, women need to be silent. I mean, it was really you know what I mean? Look pretty and don't talk and go cook. You know what I mean? Was kind of the idea. And so coming out of that, I feel like a lot of people are coming out of that kind of mentality, but becoming bigger. I guess my point is that it's okay to become bigger. And maybe this is the great gift that Venus gives us, is we examine, what's going on inside of us and go ahead and step out.
Yeah, I think it's really valuable. For example, if you were to do a full chart reading, we can look back into our family dynamics, because we learn a lot of these things in our family dynamics, and even back into the history of our family. And so, yes, really being, again, here's this awareness word, being really aware of what you're doing and of your beliefs. Because if we are carrying old beliefs around, danger, what's dangerous, what is not safe, and we are just sort of blindly believing them, then we remain small. And you used a great analogy around peeking around the corner, because that's what's happening for all of us, is that there is this absolute biological, I believe, fear of standing up for ourselves. We don't want to get beaten down. And we're seeing that. We're seeing these women standing up for themselves and getting beaten down for it, being hammered in the media. And yet we still need to be doing our own work. We still need to be looking at our fears. Like, what is that? Why am I afraid of getting hammered? What, for example, what happened in my childhood when I was big, when I was trying to get attention and trying to really be a joyful, loud, obnoxious child? What happened? And we can figure out, like, oh, my parents didn't like that. And I'm still carrying around that belief. And as we begin to discard those beliefs, then we have more access to our power and to getting big.
No, I absolutely think this is true. My own limiting beliefs around femininity, that, a feminine woman doesn't speak up, or a feminine woman, is quiet because of my religion, the religion I was a part of for a while. Although in my family, the women were very, very, very strong. But I saw the detriment of that, which was they beat the men down. And so I didn't want to be that, interestingly. And so I became the opposite. But I'm not that way. I'm very vocal. I'm very strong. I'm very vocal, and I think it was having to redefine and I think we had talked about this earlier too, but the feminine and the masculine, because all of us have both. And this is an important point, because men have feminine as well. And I think there's been a big denial of the feminine in men, where they're not allowed to be soft. And I think men want to be. I mean, most men I'm around that are really in touch with who they are, they'll cry, they're humble, you know what I mean? There's but this wonderful, healthy part of them that they let go, they let be out there, but I think the toxic masculinity is different than that. I like the toxic femininity.
Yeah. And so then, if we're in astrology, if we're talking about those two dynamics, we're talking about Venus and Mars, right? Because Mars is the masculine and the warrior. And I think that has been out of balance. And you're right. Women have been, women are not supposed to be strong. They're not supposed to be loud. They're not supposed to demand. And men are not supposed to be soft or yielding. And that's part of what's being brought back into balance right now. And we're seeing it. We're seeing groups of people that simply won't stand down. Women that are saying we're going to be powerful, and men that are saying we're going to be emotional. And, right now those aren't totally accepted, but I think that is just part of the rebalancing that's happening. And that's a great word. We are rebalancing everything right now. And we're still really unsteady. We're at the beginning.
Well, it feels very unsteady, and I know Trump came out with this gender thing that, has gotten a huge, amount of attention. And I think that's a part of it in my mind. That's a part of the rebalancing of, we have to move forward as a society. You can't just say, I'm sorry, I know we've gone this far, but we're going to stop now. We're going to go back to the 1950s. And you know what I mean? We're going to kind of, and this rebalancing, I think, is really challenging the status quo. And it's one of the good things of it, in my opinion, is women are like, somebody like me who normally would not be involved in politics or involved in speaking up is like, oh no, hell no, like we need to speak up in the right way. I feel like that's one of the great parts of rebalancing, is people start to find their voice.
Yeah, it's been very easy for most of us to pretend like things were going okay.
Right.
And these past few years, the pretending has gotten harder and harder. And you have a lot of people like us that, were never, like you said, not political, and now are feeling this real urge to not only speak out, but to really get clear on a personal level. Right. What is it that I want? What do I see? What is not right here in terms of, what doesn't feel right? And the more that we examine that, the more, stuff starts to happen, and it's a slow process.
Right. And I love what you just said about feeling. You go back to the feeling part of it. And I think this is the great gift of femininity and Venus is being able to be in touch with of how does this feel to me? And I think for me anyway, I sort of blocked that out for a long time. Like, no, you don't feel, and that's the masculine, right? But as I've gotten more and more in touch with my own feminine, it's more like, wait a minute, does this feel right to me? How does this, and I think that's it's very, very powerful to feel stuff, because then you can sense, which we were talking about danger, or, we have a much clearer perspective. And so it's wonderful to see that sort of flowering in people.
Yeah, it helps us, to soften to ourselves is very beneficial. And the softening requires really examining what we have taken to be the truth. And that's something about this Venus, all of this Venus stuff that's going on with the progress chart being with Venus in connection to Pluto, and then with the Venus retrograde, with Venus in connection to Scorpio, is that there's this mission to not accept the official story.
Right.
And I encourage anybody that listens to this, what has my official story been on relationships, on my sense of value, on what I bring to the world, on myself, on my self-esteem? And many of us will find that our official story has been pretty cruel and pretty off base.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think one of the things I've personally been learning is I have to create my own idea around what it means to be in a healthy relationship, as opposed to this is what a relationship should look like. Like, I have a lot of shoulds in my brain, rather than, wait a minute, what does this look like to me? What is my view here? And I think that's a harder thing, because then you really have to evaluate. It's not like, well, I'll just follow this over here. I have to really evaluate it. So I love that, and I think it's a part of maybe what we're going through too as a culture. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have your chart here, and I glanced over, and your North Node is in the 7th house, which is the house of relationships. And the North Node is about our soul's evolutionary journey. And you just nailed it. You're having to learn, you're having to rediscover and really figure out what healthy relationship means to you. And that is not something that we are born with. We have to walk through that fire of relationship after relationship and, gathering bits and pieces of wisdom. But that's totally like one of your soul's purposes here, is like, how can I do relationship that feels really good to me and to my partner?
Right. Yes. And it's work. I feel that work going on. And I think it's for the audience, I think that's what I love about astrology, is astrology takes you to the work, and it shows you, this is, like you just said, this is one of my life purposes in this lifetime, is to work this out. And it's really, boy, I feel it internally, and I can't run away from it. And I love that. And I think it's okay. This is part of what I'm meant to be doing here. And that's what astrology brings to the table, I think.
Yeah. And it occurs to me too, just one more thing about your chart. You have a 4th house heavy, you have a lot of planets in your 4th house, which is about family. And so know that as you do your relationship work, it is really profoundly helpful for your kids to see this. So you're not just doing the work for you, you're doing it for your family. You're breaking chains and whatnot. And, of course, anybody that's curious about what what's happening in their chart, everybody has it slightly different, but we all have things that we are really working towards. And I think Venus, especially in the chart of a woman, is, no matter where she is, no matter what sign she's in, she has so much wisdom and information for us.
Yes. And I kind of want to close out here, but I think this is one of the great gifts, I think, that women, especially older, as we get older, we have this great wisdom now, that it's almost like, okay, it's time for me to step into that and to be wise and give my wisdom to the people around me. I'm in my 50s. And honestly, I feel like kind of starting to feel like, actually, I do know some things. I think spent the majority of my life feeling like, oh, I'm such an idiot. I don't know anything, you know. And now I'm like, wait a minute, no, that's not true. Like I've got a lot to offer, and I feel like that's one of the great, powerful things about our age range is you are stepping into this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for you, that is totally working your Venus, is stepping into being somebody that is like, just that has such inner authority.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for talking about all of this. I think this is really powerful. I love the Venus, you know, what's going on with Venus. It is very challenging, but it's also a great growth for humanity and for us as individuals, which I feel like you've just done a great job of dancing back and forth between those two paradigms, right? What's going on in the world, what's going on individually. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, this was really a pleasure. I would love to talk more about it in the future.
I think we need to. I really do. So, so ladies in the audience, please comment or offer your suggestions. I think this is a very exciting topic because this is current. This is what's going on, and we're going to be doing more astrology conversations because there's a lot going on in the world that we need to talk about. So, for more information, please go to Natha Perkins' website at nathaperkins.com for more information and to contact her. So thank you so much for watching The Beauty Shaman.